Hello, Dental A Team listeners. This is Kiera Dent, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for being part of my Dental A Team family. I seriously love doing this podcast. I thought I was going to hate it, and I love it. I love it so much because I get to connect with you. I get to hear how this podcast is helping you and your practice be better. So if you have loved this podcast and you are willing to share, I would greatly appreciate if you'll share with your friends, if you'll leave us a review, if you'll give us 5 stars, anything you can do. Just like you guys grow your practices, we're trying to grow this podcast to positively impact the world of dental. This is how we get to grow our Dental A Team family. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome to the Dental A Team podcast. We're your hosts, Kiera Dent
and Dr. Mark Costas.
Mark and I had this crazy idea that maybe we could combine a dentist and a team member's perspective because let's face it, dentistry can be a challenging profession with those two perspectives. And Dental A Team podcast was created.
I'm a practicing dentist, a multiple practice owner, a dental performance coach, and the founder of the Dental Success Institute.
I've been a dental assistant, treatment coordinator, scheduler, biller, office manager, current practice owner, and international dental consultant. Mark and I don't just understand you, we are you.
Our goal is to positively impact the world of dentistry by sharing our lessons learned from the road in hundreds of dental offices.
2 perspectives, 1 mission, to help dental professionals reach their full potential. Welcome to the Dental A Team podcast. Hello, Dental A Team listeners. This is Kiera, and you guys, I just left a practice that I want to autopsy with you right now because it's fresh on my mind, and I think when you can autopsy a practice, man, these are great. Okay, I have been working with this practice for a year. I show up, practice is doing really well numbers-wise. They've got great systems, great doctor, but the reality is, culture's not super fantastic. Accountability is not 100% there. Doctor is driving this team. Huge practice, multiple ops, multiple locations, lots and lots and lots of entitlement feeling. So I worked with them. I've been in their office 3 times. First visit, I implemented morning huddles, route slips. You know it, guys. Morning huddles, route slips, and the doctor NDTR. This office was doing a really, really, really fantastic job of utilizing X's and slashes. I'm not kidding. In morning huddle, they literally look to see where the doctor needs to hop out of their procedure into the hygiene exam so their hygiene exams don't have to be alerted. Genius tip right there, guys, if you want to use one. Like, seriously, so smart. They seriously look so the doctors know they can look at the column on the side to see where they need to go at what time for what exam. They have it linked to the hygienist, so they know their 2 columns of hygiene. This is when they need to go do their exams for each hygiene. They're also not overlapping to make the doctor in too many places at one time. Seriously, one of the best scheduling offices I've ever seen in my life. They also pre-block where they can add in same-day treatment in the schedule, so the doctor knows before they go in to do an exam where they can offer same-day treatment without even having to talk to anyone. You're talking about systems. This office had some pretty tight systems, but they were struggling with management. The team was telling me that their manager they didn't feel was in the game. The manager wasn't following through. There were a lot of pieces that were there. So that's what I implemented on the first visit, helped them all. Second visit, I came in. Granted, between the first and second visit, I actually got phone calls from team members that were on this team calling me, complaining about management and that they weren't getting this and that people were upset and that people didn't feel like the manager was taking action. So in good old Kiera fashion, my next visit I come in guns ablaze and I'm ready to go. But instead, I decided to listen to this practice. Had a heart-to-heart with the office manager. I told her what was going on and what her team was saying. Of course, I did not break confidentiality. If any team member ever calls me, I will never, ever, ever break that confidentiality. Unless it's something illegal, then you better believe I'm breaking your confidentiality. So I'm not that secret keeper. But I do trust and I do appreciate that team members will tell me what's going on. They really are awesome when they'll do that. And I appreciate that because that makes me a better coach to the office and I can actually give you the results you're looking for. So that's what happened with this practice. So on my second visit, what I decided to do was I had a heart-to-heart with the entire practice. My goals were not tangible goals per se. They were, because obviously I would not be Kiera Dent if I don't give tangibles that you can actually sink your teeth into and you can grow. But on the second visit, I talked to them. If you're going to pose a problem, you better darn well propose a solution. And I'm not going to have you sit in this meeting with me and not tell me what you really feel, and you're just going to wait until I leave, and then you're going to tell me the dirty laundry. In case any of you are listening and you're having a coach or a consultant come into your practice, I firmly believe, and who knows, maybe other consultants are not me. So maybe I'm giving you advice only if I'm coming into your office or my team's coming in. You guys, I need to know what's going on, and I expect you to play full out. I don't do repercussions, and I don't fire people unless you're stealing from a company. Then you're going to get fired. But beyond that, we're pretty chill because I want team members to survive. I want you guys to have a great job, and I want the doctor to be super happy. So with this team, though, I told them, I said, guys, you better play full out. And if you're not willing to bring up a situation and an issue in our traction style meeting, that's on you. And I said, some of you are going to get uncomfortable. I had a really strong 4-hour meeting with them. We set quarterly rocks as a team. I realized that they were struggling with accountability because they didn't have direction or focus per department. I also helped their leadership team, and I helped their office manager. The office manager committed to doing 5:30 a.m. coaching calls with me to prove to her team that she was serious about growing in leadership. Holy moly. Who wants to work in that practice? I do. Like, that's an office manager who was able to listen, take criticism, not get offended. I mean, that's got to be hard. But she said, you know what, Kiera? I'm in this to win it. And I am so grateful that my team told you and you were willing to tell me. I'm going to prove to them that I will change and I am a different manager. Holy moly, I was impressed. So we set quarterly rocks with them on visit 2. We made sure everybody knew which direction they were going. They were achievable. There were dates set in place. This team does a darn good job of holding people accountable. I also chimed in on their leadership team meeting that the executive team has together, or the management team. I did a Zoom call with them because the goal was to increase the leadership of the team. The doctor does not sugarcoat. He's very good at holding his team accountable. He's also very good at growing his doctors. So that's what they were working on for the last several months. Then I came in this time. I will tell you, in the about 9 months that I've been working with this practice, they have increased their practice profitability. They've increased their production per provider. They've increased their hygiene production exponentially to where their hygienists are producing over 3.4 times their pay on PPO insurance. They have an accountable team. They're able to run. The doctor was able to take 2 weeks off, not skip a beat, and not get hardly any phone calls. The office manager was able to take time off without any phone calls coming in. Patient reviews, they have over 400 Google reviews for their practice. They're averaging about 75 new patients per month, and they're retaining them. Their AR has dropped to where they only have about $5,000 in their over 90. They're watching it. They know how many patients are on Invisalign. They know how many are on compassionate finance, on Abella payment plans, because you have to be careful. You can get cash flow poor by having too many payment plans going on in their practice. They know all those stats. Their KPIs are reported every single week. They have executive leadership meetings. They have end-of-day checklists that are turned in, spot-checked, and returned back for accountability. You talk about a massive change in a practice in 9 months. This practice also, morale substantially increased. This practice is producing over $350,000 per month. They're not a small practice. They have, I believe, they have 4 hygienists, 3 doctors, and I think they've got 16 operatories. So we have a pretty big practice. Not all operatories are being utilized. They also are not to full capacity, and not 3 doctors are ever working at one time. It's typically 2 doctors with the 4 hygienists. They also have a second satellite location, which has I believe it's got a 45% profitability. It's smaller, and they're trying to grow that one right now with a focus on marketing. They also have a marketing plan laid out that they were able to execute over the last 3 months. Boom, shakalaka, guys. That's not because I'm super awesome. It's because this team wanted it. They were hungry. They went after it. They had the leadership that said, we're doing this and we're going to find the way to get there. You should hear their team leads in meetings. When I give them something, we're like, we don't know how to do it. You better believe they spin around and like, we can absolutely do it. It was crazy cool because yesterday I was setting Q4 rocks with them. We were having kind of our Q4 meeting with the whole team. And what was really cool is when I asked them for their issues, because I only allow teams to do a 5-minute issues list. When I had them do that, the issues last time used to be, people aren't accountable. We don't have great communication. Our schedule, the front and back office. It was really, really nitpicky with one another. This time, their issues were, how do we get to 75 new patients a month consistently? How do we grow our marketing? We need to figure out how to do assisted hygiene because one of our hygienists is moving and we need to figure that out. Can you see the caliber of issues that they were bringing up as opposed to little nitpicky ones that didn't really matter from before? But they had to fix that culture. They had to fix the accountability before they could move on. And I am so proud of this office. This office said, we're doing this. It wasn't instantaneous. It was over a 9-month course. I have a couple months left with them. And then next year, we're going to roll into coaching. And I'm going to do 4 meetings with them in person of leadership training. So I'm going to go in and teach them how to run quarterly meetings with the executive team and also with their in-office team. Talk about a change in a practice. And I've been thinking about this, so let's autopsy this. Here are the pieces that I take away from it. Number 1, they didn't just fire people. They gave them an opportunity to rise. Number 2, they held them accountable. They didn't lower their standards to meet people's need for mediocrity. Instead, they had their standards of excellence that they expected their team to rise to. Number 3, they got their office manager and their key players' heads in the game. They've got that executive team that's honestly growing the entire company aligned on the same track. Every single week they have an executive team meeting. You better believe that those have gone deep. They're willing to talk about when another team member is not holding somebody accountable, and they discuss it and they come up with a solution. They're now working on making sure that accountability loop is closing more and more and more, so it's tighter and tighter and tighter. That's a forever, ever going process, but they're doing it. They also just launched a book club for their practice where they're reading Atomic Habits. Super rad. The doctor just gave books out to the entire office. They're going to read it. They're going to have accountability check-ins within their department every week. And then once a month, they're going to be doing entire office takeaways. Super rad, guys. Super cool stuff. The doctor's invested in the team. The doctor's invested in his team members, not just professionally, but personally as well. The office manager proved and won over trust. She got connected to herself of how to live with integrity with herself. If she told a team member she would do something, she followed up with it. If she said she was going to find the solution, she found the solution. She wasn't afraid to have the hard conversations, and she stopped taking offense and instead listened for 5 minutes and then worked on finding the solution and made her team start coming to a solution-based model. I'm telling you guys, these are those pieces of culture and character that when placed and given time will foster accountable teams, higher production, lower overhead, and lower stress. That doctor used to have to manage and micromanage this entire team. Now he has a team of ownership-minded people. Yep, they lose team members. They just had somebody who left the practice because they weren't in alignment with where this practice was going. They are actually able to know that this person they've been dealing with for several years, but they were able to figure it out because they were in alignment with what they're looking for as a practice. If you guys want to talk about like some sick, awesome, like autopsy of a practice, that's 3 visits I did with them. That's not a lot of in-office coaching. That's not a ton of training. I only go into these practices for a day to a day and a half. Max is 2 days, but this office, I didn't even see them for 2 days. They held it accountable. They were given the roadmap. They were given the steps. They used me. Their front office scheduler, she texts me. She's like, hey, Kiera, I can't figure out how to do this. Can you help me? They actually utilize their coaching as coaching. Their office manager won over their team. These are all the pieces. And so like check your office. Autopsy your own practice. Are you doing those things that I put into place? How could you autopsy your own practice? Do you have accountability? Are you closing the loop? Where are you guys at? I autopsy practices because I think it's really fun. One of my coolest, I think like the coolest thing about Kiera, I mean, I'm a pretty rad person, you guys, but honestly, this is where I think I dazzle. It's that I have experience that a lot of you don't have. I get to go to hundreds of practices and come up with the themes that I see. I get to go into all these like, okay, you guys need this. I've heard about this. This works well in this practice. I can see all these different practices and I've got that experience. So I'm sharing that with you guys on the podcast. Check yourself. You don't go see all these practices. Are you doing these things? This practice I'd say is in my like, when I first started with them, they're in my like 30% of the bulk of the practices. They knew their numbers. They had quite a few systems already in place. I have dumped them now into the top 10% of practices that I see. There's not a lot up there. They're working to get to the top 5% of practices I see. They're going after that overhead. They're trying to get the overhead down. They're going to work on their supplies. They're going to get their executive team stronger. That's what's going to make them in that top 5%. That top 5% is hard. They're like, we're turning that dial slowly and we're going after it. So those are the pieces that we're looking for. I want you guys to autopsy your own practice. What would I find if I came into your practice? What would my team find? What do you think? I just went to another practice. They were rad. I am not kidding you. They seriously said, you know what? Kiera's going to come in. She talked about these things on her podcast. So shout out to you guys for listening to the podcast. Thank you. I appreciate it. Get your teams on this, guys. My goal is to help out your offices for you so you don't have to. And they said, you know what, Kiera, we know what you put into place in your practices. We've heard your podcast. They had all those things done before I showed up. So I was able to get down and dirty with them, and we strategized and we came up with crazy cool stuff to implement because we weren't working with the basics. So check yourself. Where's your practice? What do you need to implement today to take it to the next level? Do you need to hire a coach? Don't worry. We're accepting new clients all the time. So give us a call if you want. Do you need to have some accountability talks? Do you need to be like this office manager and take some ownership? Do you need to stop getting offended when people bring you honest feedback? This office also does quarterly surveys. They find out what their team thinks about them anonymously every single quarter. Genius. This office manager needed to get the information and her team wouldn't tell her directly, so they did it through an anonymous survey. Check yourself. What do you need to do? What questions do you have to answer? Are you willing to take the change? 9 months is an impressively short amount of time, in my opinion, from what I've seen with other offices, but they were hungry and they wanted it. Are you hungry? Do you want it? And how bad? Because guess what, guys? I watch a lot of businesses. I'm like, oh, I want that. But I don't want to go through what they had to do to get there. So how bad do you actually want it? Autopsy your practice. If you have a super, super, super cool you want me to autopsy with you, I will happily take 2 guests. So you got to email in hello@thedentalateam.com. I will go through and we will autopsy your practice via podcast. I will give you feedback. It's kind of like at conferences when they're saying we'll do your social media. We'll look at your website. And I'm like a chicken and I don't want to raise my hand, but I really do want them to break apart my website with me and tell me what I need to work on. If you want to do a live autopsy of your practice, give me a shout out. hello@thedentalateam.com and I will happily autopsy with you. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you next time on the Dental 18 podcast.
And that wraps it up for another episode of the Dental 18 podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.